Here's Brian back.
We were off to
Yeah.
an unauspicious start. I'm sorry. Problem. Somehow our YouTube channel was linking into the studio and was replaying what was being done live. So I think it is now fixed. So I apologize, everyone. Welcome. It's Brian McCall, joined by Mary Rundis, our acting managing editor. Despite our little interference there, we are going to present you with our weekly news roundup today.
Absolutely.
So our stories that we're going to be covering today are Cardinal Burke evicted, the dictator Pope strikes again. Davos, we have a problem. Yet another election going again, at least against the New World Order. Some really interesting story that very few people are covering. A lot of these protests that are going on in Ireland. We're going to give you some information on that. It's been hard to find in the mainstream media. And finally, our final story is Big Brother is watching, always watching, on a couple different instances of encroachment on basically freedom of expression and particularly against Catholics. Right. So before we get started, as is our practice, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the liturgical life of the church this week. So today is the feast of St. Andrew. And this is the feast that determines the beginning of Advent. So if you're wondering, when does Advent begin? It is always the Sunday closest to the feast of St. Andrew. So because it's a Thursday, that'll be this Sunday. When the feast of St. Andrew is a Tuesday, it's the Sunday before. So it's kind of the marker that fixes that. He obviously was an apostle and a martyr. So we get a second class feast for that today. Obviously coming up, we have the first Sunday of Advent. This Advent, we get a short, whether you consider it good or bad news, we have a short Advent. It's a kind of odd year where the fourth Sunday of Advent will be Christmas Eve, will be December 24th. So if we haven't started your Christmas preparations spiritually, we have a shorter race to the finish. So it's a good reminder to get prepared, get started. Following that, a couple other saints coming up, among them Saint Francis Xavier, the great patron of the missions. He converted and baptized tens of thousands of people in India. He traveled all around the East. He wanted to get into the great country of China. He died in a small island just off the coast of China, having visited Japan and made some conversions in Japan. His work lasted even when the Jesuits were expelled. There was a small group of Catholics who kept the faith for many, many centuries, even without access to the sacraments or a priest. So he laid a very solid foundation there. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on upcoming saints you wanted to share with us, Mary?
Yeah, absolutely. So this week we got St. Andrew. That's an amazing saint. I think if we have any Scottish listeners, that's going to be especially important for them. It's really a good story about the feast day itself and the how he got the patronage of Scotland. Robert the Bruce, the great king himself, actually petitioned Pope, I believe it was John the 22nd, to make him the patron of Scotland. I think it's very important. We're talking a lot about the Gaelic communities with Ireland, and their brothers are the Scots as well. So I think St. Andrew, important feast for everyone. Of course, you can start the St. Andrew Novena today, but I think for the Scottish people as well, that's something important to take note of.
Absolutely right. Great to mention that his great patronage there. Well, let's get started with our stories for today. So His Eminence, Cardinal Leo Burke, has been evicted. He has been kicked out. Well, is going to be evicted from his apartment in Rome. This story broke a couple days ago. It's now received multiple layers of confirmation. The dictator Pope, apparently in a meeting in the Vatican, announced something to the effect, we need to do something about our enemies. And Cardinal Burke, being one of those enemies, has to be first evicted from his Vatican subsidized apartment. And two, his salary as a retired cardinal, I guess we might say his pension, has to be taken away. Now, obviously, Cardinal Burke has a lot of supporters and friends. I don't think he's going to literally be living on the streets. But the point is, I mean, this is really, I mean, extraordinary that
Mhm.
you are using the governance of the church to kind of punish your enemies, people that you're considering an enemy who have raised doubts about things you're teaching for the good of the faith. Right? It's
Right.
really kind of the height of vindictiveness, it would appear. And again, we kind of waited on this story, but as the days have gone on, more and more people, more and more news outlets have confirmed
Right.
that this is coming. And it's sort of on the heels of the Joseph Strickland removal from Tyler, Texas, is sort of again another example of where the church just seems to being run like a mafia ring, right? Where
Mhm.
let's go get our enemies rather than governance for the salvation of souls. And again, interesting. I
Right.
mean, Cardinal Burke, we forget he was sort of the first canceled bishop. He
Mhm.
was, I mean, the equivalent in U.S. terms of the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. He was the head of the Apostolic Signatura, the highest court, and he was on several congregations at a very young age. Pope Francis just kicked him off, said, "You have
Mhm.
sorry, nothing to do, no work for you here." But as a cardinal of his station, he still was entitled, like I said, to some monetary support and a place to live in Rome. But now, apparently, the dictator pope has decided enough. Now,
Mhm.
interestingly, want to contrast with this story another story that broke this week about a letter being sent to the bishops in Germany. And
Mhm.
interestingly, the some of the news, the Vatican news service, for example, says Vatican draws line on German synodality. And you might say, oh, this is a contrast. Okay, he's cracking down on Burke, but he's also cracking down on the German bishops. And again,
Mhm.
some of the news people have spun this story this way. But I don't think so. Really, it's interesting if you read the letter that the Vatican Cardinal Petro Parolin, Secretary of State, has sent to them. He doesn't really say, "Hey, stop pushing homosexuality and all these things." He's really
Right.
just saying, stop doing it in your own way. Like, get with our program. We're trying to do this over here. We have the synod on synodality. That's the thing. Stop having your own separate way to get there. You should be coming to the party meetings, not having your own separate party over there. Because really is what it says. It says the synod on synodality is underway, and you should not have a parallel way to examine these issues. So it's not really saying we're not going to go there. It's just saying
Mhm.
you should be along with us doing these things, not doing it on your own. Now, other news sources have highlighted a letter saying there will be disciplinary measures.
Right.
Very careful. It doesn't say we're going to discipline you for preaching things contrary to the faith. I mean, they've passed documents, as reported on, saying women should be ordained, homosexuality is fine. It doesn't say we're going to discipline you for that. We're going to take away your salaries, your apartments.
Mhm.
We're going to kick you out of your diocese. No, but if you go and ordain someone, some women, if you ordain women, there will be, quote, disciplinary penalties. Now, again, Pope Francis seems pretty happy to impose disciplinary penalties when you're his, quote, enemy. But the German bishops, have been warned over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, the Vatican first had a letter sent in 2019 from Pope Francis saying, "Hey, knock it off. Stop the synodality. Your synodal way is getting a little off track. It's elitist. It's not helpful." They didn't stop. November 10th, he again expressed deep concerns about what's going on in the German synodal way. They were
Mhm.
called into the Vatican last year. Stop doing this. They met over the summer, right? Over and over again. Stop, stop, stop. And as far as we can tell, they haven't stopped at all. They just keep passing even more radical things. And again, this is really we're seeing this hypocrisy here. Burke is slapped down on, Strickland, but the German bishops, they get these formal letters acting like he's saying stop doing anything. They pay no attention to them, and there's really no consequence. And so I have a real different take on this, where some news outlets are saying, "Hey, this is finally they're cracking down on them." I don't see anything. It's all talk. It's all letters. Yet another letter, and they just blow it off and keep doing what they're doing. And as I said, at the core of it, it's not saying we're never going to do these things. It's just saying you should be joining my synod party, not having your own.
Right. Yeah. And Brian, I think it's important that we take a moment and reflect on just the absurdity of this
Yes.
situation. We have in this pontificate, we have a pope who reports have come out saying it doesn't even look like he's celebrated at least a public mass in 1 or 2 years. And at the moment, if you've seen videos and images coming out of the Vatican, we currently, or at least just got over a circus, an actual circus going on that the Pope is attending. And amidst this, we also have a Pope cracking down on this traditionalist cardinal, traditional leaning bishop in Strickland and in
Yeah.
Burke. And I think you bring up a good point, and this is something Archbishop Vigano recently pointed out, which is that there's a lot of action taken against the traditionalists, right? Actual things done in that we are going to get Strickland out of his diocese. We're going to kick Burke out of Rome. But when we are talking about things against the liberals, there's a lot of talk. It's a lot of warnings. You better stop that. But there actually is no action in reality, and this is politics, because you're going to get all of the conservative apologists now saying, "Look, Pope Francis has been conservative all along. He's even more conservative than John Paul II or Benedict XVI," as if that meant anything. But
Right.
amidst all this, that's how he's going to retain power, is convincing the apologists that he is conservative, while in reality curtailing the traditional movement, curtailing conservatism within the church. I think we should support Cardinal Burke in this, even though if we don't agree with him on everything. For example, I have issues with him on what he said about the Society of St. Pius X, but I still think we need to support him. He has said that he thinks as a cardinal he has the duty to stay in Rome, and I applaud him for that. I think we need more defenders of tradition in the church, even if we don't agree with him on everything.
Uh, Absolutely. We certainly do need more defenders of tradition. There's not all that many. And again, uh, the few that are out there, the more help, the better. So
Yeah.
absolutely true. But again, I find this really an interesting parallel stories that come out this week, and I found it more surprising that people really
Hmm.
thought something was really going on to crack
Right.
down on what's going on in Germany. But
Yeah. Absolutely.
well, we're going to stay in Europe for our next story, and we
Mhm.
talked last week about the Argentinian election. We have kind of another similar story. Davos, we have a problem. There seems to be another populist surging ahead.
That's right. Yes. And so this takes place in the Netherlands, or Holland, as some people call it. This came as a big time surprise. Gert Wilders has won the election over there. Now, it's important to note. Many media outlets have come out and said, "Oh, he's the new prime minister." But the Dutch politics is quite complicated. They need 75 seats for a majority. His party won 37, which is still a majority, but it's not the absolute majority that he needs. So he's going to need to form a coalition. But this party it's quite amazing to see the things that they've supported. The platform of Wilders and his party, the Party for Freedom, as it's called in the Netherlands, has been very anti-Islam. Wilders has even been on record saying he wants to ban the Quran and Islamic schools. It's been very explicit in being anti-Islam. And it's important to note how this happened. I noticed a trend in polling data among the Party for Freedom and Wilders. For some reason, right after the date October 7th, his party got very popular. Right after we saw the Palestinian Hamas attacks against Israel, there seemed to be an awakening, realizing, oh wait, it doesn't seem like importing a bunch of Islamic migrants is a good idea anymore. Um, and he actually won by quite a lot in the Netherlands, and one of the reasons for that is a lot of the conservative, or the so-called conservative parties in the Netherlands, have let down the Dutch people for quite some time. And a statistic that I wanted to point out is just how devastating this influx of Islamic migrants has had on the Netherlands. Um, I'm going to pull something up on my screen here, just to show everybody here. Give me one moment. So on the screen, let me show you. On the screen here, you can see this statistic.
Mm.
Is everything good on that end, Brian? Can you see it
Yep.
on the
No,
screen?
I can see it.
Okay, great. As you can see, this is the data for the crime among the immigrant population. So already you can see that the immigrant population represents 14% of the Netherlands, which is already quite high.
Yeah.
In many of these European countries, it used to represent 6, 7, 8%. That's gone up into the double digits after the Syrian refugee conflict. But just look at the disproportion we have here. Of this 14% of the population, 39% of the assaults are committed by that 14%.
Mm.
36% of the sexual misconducts that take place in the Netherlands committed by this population. 41% of the drug offenses, which is quite surprising. The liberal Dutch in that country do have they do quite like their drugs. That's been known for quite some time, especially in Amsterdam. So to see the immigrants are taking even more, going to the offense level is surprising as well. But
Yeah,
the
I didn't think there
shocking,
was actually any drug offense you could commit in the Netherlands. I guess
yeah,
that
it
really
was
was
surprising to me as well, right? And 61% of the robberies in this country committed also by this immigrant population. That's absurd. And if you are a Dutch person living in that country, you're going to feel that. That's going to be very evident. And so Geert Wilders has been running on this anti-immigrant, anti-Islamic campaign. He's explicitly said we need less Moroccans, less Algerians in this country, which are the where the majority of these immigrants are coming from. And I will say, just to conclude this on my end, this reminds me a lot of a movement we saw in the early 20th century, which was Action Française.
Mm.
We hear a lot about this with Marcel Lefebvre and the story regarding the Archbishop. There's a large movement that is supporting a good identity cause, right? Supporting Western culture, and that's good. But I do have some concerns about it, just as many Catholics had with Action Française, which is that the basis on which they're founding their anti-Islamic ideas are actually on liberalism. We've heard Geert
Mm.
Wilders and his party say, well, actually, the reason why we're against Islam is because they commit disproportionate violence against LGBT people, and they're oppressing the LGBT community. Now, I'm not for violence against those
No.
people, of course not. But what I am saying is that they're basing this on liberal rhetoric rather than saying Islam is fundamentally against Western values and it shouldn't be allowed in this country. And rather than importing all of them, I think we need more of men like Charles Martel kicking out the Islamic hordes that are ruining Europe at the moment, committing all of these crimes, rather than importing them en masse. What do you think, Brian?
No, and you're right. It's kind of like what we said about Malay, last time we talked about
Mhm.
Argentina. I mean, this guy is not great, and the party he stands for are often coming to the problem with the wrong perspective. But what it's showing is that people are not accepting the New World Order narrative, right? That
Right,
people are sort of
right.
seeing, okay, in other words, I don't know how to fix this. Like, I don't really know what's wrong, or I don't see that 19th century liberalism is what got us here, but I'm actually
Mhm.
seeing that things are not as great as I'm being told, right? That,
Right.
the Europeans have been told for decades now that open borders, mass immigration, population change is good. It's good. It's good. It's good. And the sort of they've now the curtain has dropped, right? And they can see the what's behind it is not actually good for them or their country. And so they're
Mhm.
waking up and they're looking for anybody that's not spouting the narrative. So
Right.
again, that's what's sort of interesting about it. It's showing that things are getting bad enough that people are at least seeing the consequences, and it's very much like what's going on in the church in that sense, right?
Yeah.
With the pontificate of Francis, people are saying, "Wow!" Like people who, if you had ever said, "Hey, the Assisi thing in 1986, that's not really good," would have gone crazy and said, "How dare you criticize or say there's something wrong with what John Paul II did?" Are now
Mhm.
it's gotten so in their face that they're not seeing that Vatican II is the origin of what's going on, but they're at least saying, "Okay, we've got a problem now. This is not the springtime," and I think it's the same phenomenon that we're seeing.
Yeah, and this has been a constant struggle with the church. I mentioned Action Francais. We optimally would want a group that bases its principles on Roman Catholicism and the truths of the faith. But I think we should at least be open to working with these groups. I mean, of course,
Mhm.
with Action Francais, they were even though they were built on sort of utilitarian bent, we could have worked with them. I think Pius XII admitted that, and in the same case here, we don't want our countries overthrown by foreign hordes that are against
Right.
our values. And I think we should consider working with these people. That definitely should be considered.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we're going to transition to the third story, but it's really connected, I think, in some
Mhm.
ways. And that's the events that have been going on in Ireland recently that have seemed to finally gotten the Irish. Usually the Irish are pretty hot headed and react to things, but they've been almost
Right.
put to sleep the past few decades. They've been bought off by the European Union. More money has flowed into Ireland from the European Union. It's
Mhm.
really transformed the country over decades. But the effect of it is what I always say: the European Union has been able to do to Ireland what the English couldn't do for 450 years, essentially turn it into a secular, non-Catholic country.
Yeah.
The English couldn't stamp out the Catholic Church for 450 years, but the EU money seems to. But again, at least these events recently seem to show that the Irish may at least have had enough. So you want to maybe tell us what's going on?
Mhm.
I bet a lot of people don't know because this is a hard story to find.
Yeah. So we have a very sad case going on in Ireland. What we have, just a recap for everybody. Um, Last week at about 1:30, a Algerian immigrant who had been in Ireland for some decades went outside of a primary school and started stabbing children. Just stabbing children, just as it's unbelievable. One of the worst acts you can do. Uh, Luckily, a heroic education worker in her 30s had intervened and stopped the man. The man was apprehended. And this has caused a lot of trouble in Ireland, to say the least. A lot of the Irish are very mad, and just like in the Dutch situation, it's a similar thing going on there. A lot of violence has been seen in Europe by the Irish, and it hasn't been made a reality really until now. Now we're finally seeing that. But the immigration issue has certainly affected them as well. The housing, if you talk to any Irish person, you're going to notice they're going to complain about the housing market over there. Uh, the house, it's impossible to get affordable housing over there. It's impossible to procure your own capital anymore because of this mass immigration. Um, the immigration level has gone up beyond belief by importing mainly these Algerians, these North Africans, um, and so in response to this stabbing, the Irish have revolted. They were rioting in the streets. We have a video here, if I can show that. Here it is. Right, and for us Americans, this is a familiar sight, which is, just sort of smoke in the streets and a sort of riot going on. Um, and an important thing to note about this is they were burning the Holiday Inn. That's a particularly important thing and a landmark thing for the Irish because uh, from what I've seen, it would seem a lot of these politicians own the hotels, profit off of them by using them to house immigrants. And so they picked that place for a very particular reason. Now, in response to these riots, which I will say, it doesn't look like anybody's been stabbed, nobody's been attacked and hurt, but we've seen what's the main concern of the liberal Irish government? It's the people talking about defending their country rather than the stabbings. I have a quote here. Sinn Féin, they're the big liberal party over there in Ireland, said that our rioters need to be held to account and their actions are unjustifiable. I find that so absurd for
Ironic,
Sinn Féin to say. The IRA, a terrorist organization,
right?
their political wing, you've got them saying this rioting is just need to be held to account, unjustifiable. What a joke that we've come into. It's completely liberalism for me, but not for thee. I will also say the Irish prime minister, who's openly gay, married, quote unquote, to a another man. He said his big concern is hate speech laws, and we need to suppress this Islamophobia. In response to this, I see some people in the chat mentioning this. Conor McGregor, a very popular mixed martial arts fighter, spoke out against that. Elon Musk also said that the prime minister openly, he said that the prime minister's action shows that he hates Irish people. And of course, the prime minister is very offended by that. This is an absurd situation in Ireland. It would seem that the Irish government does not like the Irish people anymore, does not stand for them. And I think, Brian, you said an amazing thing. Cromwell could only have dreamed of making the Irish as to such a lowered extent as this. It's quite absurd.
Exactly. And now, again, to be clear, we're not saying going and burning buildings and things is a good thing.
Absolutely not.
Their
No.
reaction, and again, it does appear that they've not killed any people, but maybe some people have gotten hurt. We certainly are not saying that that is good. But what we're saying is what's surprising is the reaction, because the Irish have basically just sat there and taken their country to be dismantled, uh, essentially replaced by non-Irish people.
Right.
And bought and paid for by the EU. They have received the highest subsidies in the EU for such a long time, and they didn't seem to react to anything. So the fact that it's just sort of burst out, so that it's been boiling up and showing that there's discomfort, and again, the reaction of the government is really surprising, as you say, rather than saying, "Wow, I guess we have a problem here. We're going to address this. We're going to look at the situation." No, what the prime minister says is, well, the first thing we need to do is tighten our hate speech laws.
Yep.
Right? That not even addressing the problem that is there. And the problem you point out with Sinn Féin is really, the Irish independence movement from England is really got a mixed history. We don't have a lot of time to talk all of it, but clearly their goal to want to be free from the Protestant English oppression was good, but essentially Sinn Féin and their political sold out to socialism, and they basically sold out to liberalism and socialism, and got support for their movement by sort of adopting those principles. And most Irish people just supported it because we want to be free of the English, without realizing that they were sort of signing up for this kind of liberal political cause that they didn't agree with at all, but they wanted to be free of the English. And then they sort of woke up in this now Freemasonic liberal country that came about from the independence. And so again, it's not surprising that Sinn Féin is sort of on the side of the liberal elites, because that's really where they've been from the beginning. So it's a sad situation there. But I did find it interesting, this story, when it first started to break, there were these reports about the perpetrator of this crime that was and again, like I said, this I think was just the powder, the spark that lit a powder keg that must have been there. But the news media jumped all over everybody saying, this is not an immigrant, this was Irish on Irish crime. And then it kind of came out, the facts you reported, that, well, wait, that's not quite right. And then they dropped the story, right? Then they did. Then they just had to bury the story because it kind of didn't fit with the narrative. But again, the Netherlands, Argentina, Orban, who's kind of been ahead of this over in Eastern Europe, Meloni in Italy, although she's kind of weakened, softened a little bit. None of them are perfect. None of these things, obviously, and obviously the violence is not good at all. But it's showing that people have had enough, and the nightly news telling you everything's okay, just trust us, isn't working anymore. And people are realizing that the fantasy that the elites are telling them is just around the corner is not really there, right? In the United States, people are going in and seeing, my wife saw, I think at its height, eggs, were like $8. And, that's a fact that means more than the person on CNN telling you the economy's great. And all of this seems to be coalescing around what I think next year is going to be a really interesting year. I think this is a spark. But you almost get the sense the world is like Europe in 1914, right? Before the outbreak of World War I. There's just these sort of powder kegs that are getting ignited, but that there's something sort of brewing under the surface, which we'll see what form it takes. But I think I think next year is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said the thing about them waking up, because I think it really it strikes me as odd in Ireland. You know, they imported this liberal ideology talking about, well, you need to feel bad for your white supremacy of oppressing other people. If there's any group of people
Right.
that cannot claim to be having taken advantage of others and being supremacists, it's the Irish. This liberal ideology does not work in these countries. People are waking up to it, and so it like you said, don't condone any of the actual public disorder, rioting, causing violence. But what I would say is I do support people waking up to this and noticing something's off here. We need to start going back to Western values.
Uh, exactly. Well, before we go into our fourth story, I'm going to pause for just a moment and let you know
Mhm.
about a program we have started with Sophia Press. Sophia Press Institute Press has really been publishing a lot of interesting, good books in the last couple of years.
Mhm.
We've highlighted a few of them. We have decided to partner with them, and you can support Catholic Family News by buying some of their books on their website through our referral link. So, and we'll put this in the description for the video. If you go to sophiainstitute.com/ref/63, anything you purchase there, a portion of your purchase will go to support the apostolate of Catholic Family News. So again, a lot of good books there. Good material. Again, no place is perfect. I'm not saying, because we'll get somebody probably say, "Oh, they have this one book. I don't agree with it." Right, fine, but they more by and large, everything I've seen so far has been very edifying. But by purchasing through this link, you will be able to actually help support the free content we're making available here. So let you know about that program. You'll also be seeing that in different places for our print content as well. But it's a good way to maybe buy some Christmas gifts and help out our apostolate as well.
Mhm.
Well, our last story is again a kind of collection of little vignettes of some stories that our Big Brother is watching. It always reminds me of that Monsters Inc. movie. What was her name? I'm always watching you.
Oh,
Roz. uh, it's omnipresent. We live really in a world, I wouldn't even say an Orwellian world. I think it's beyond George Orwell's vision. I mean, it was reported this week that that Smith, the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, has subpoenaed all records, all social media records showing any contact on social media between former President Donald Trump and anyone. I mean, it's
right.
just the capacity for looking and watching and censoring is just extraordinary,
Mhm.
given technology. So, two stories. There's a really good piece over at the Epic Times, and again, we're pretty critical. I'm pretty critical of media outlets. The Epic Times, again, don't agree with everything they say, but they're
Mhm.
actually a news organization. I mean, they certainly have opinions. They do opinion pieces, but they really just report news and what the information is there. And so they really, I subscribe to them. I think and they're not sponsoring us, so this is really just my opinion. I think they're really a good outlet. Well, they
Mhm.
did a expose on a UN agency plan to expand worldwide censorship.
Mhm.
So UNESCO, which is United Nations Organization for Education and Science, right? And they have adopted about a 59-page document to get more censorship, because what the world needs is more censorship. UNESCO is yet another one of these typical bloated New World Order nanny agencies that want to tell everybody what to do. Former President Donald Trump thankfully withdrew the United States from them, along with the World Health Organization. But the resident in chief, Joe Biden, has put us back in and agreed
Yeah.
to pay millions and millions of dollars to them. So, what is this document? And again, the Epic Times report really goes through it pretty extensively. It wants member organizations, private companies, other non-government organizations to regulate and censor speech. They want independent regulators shielded from political and economic interests. Well, I don't know who that is, but national, regional, and global governance systems should be able to cooperate and share practices in addressing content that could be permissibly restricted under international human rights standards.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know what that means. It's sort of contradictory, right?
Right.
Human rights standards are government should not be censoring political speech. So consistent with not censoring speech, we want to censor speech. I mean, this is the sort of Orwellian double talk that they are used to. Now, again, what is it that they want to censor? Their favorite words: misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories, which relate to health information, doubting the validity of elections. It's the same old list. They're listed in their report. Now, again, what's sort of bizarre about this is, well, okay, let's like this term conspiracy theory. So what is a conspiracy theory? It is a theory, which means you have a hypothesis backed by some facts that two or more people are acting in concert to achieve some goal. Okay. So either people are having theories that are wrong. Okay. These people were not acting in concert. Throw one out. The CIA and other government agencies were not conspiring to cover up what happened in the death of President John F. Kennedy. Okay. There's a theory. A lot of people say they're people cooperating. So either they're wrong and the facts don't support it, in which case produce the facts, or they're right. And what's wrong with telling people about it, right? And it's not, again, the problem is they've just attached a connotation to a simple fact, a theory about a conspiracy, which is really a neutral thing. It's neither bad or good. I mean, it is just a theory, and it's either right or wrong, but they've attached it to you are insane and you think you're Napoleon, right? It's sort of a mental illness that you think these things. Well, again, it's kind of like there are crazy people who think they're a Napoleon and they have something mentally wrong, but but there are other people, right, who are just saying, well, look, I'm looking at evidence and something doesn't look right here, and I have a theory that something's going on. Again, prove me wrong, show me I'm wrong, but absent the facts. And by the way, why are you still keeping secret documents that would prove me wrong about the Kennedy assassination? For example, right?
Right.
And again, it's so instead of saying, well, okay, people are talking about this, they have theories, we're going to disprove it, we're just going to silence you. Well, why do they have to be silenced? Again, if it's just a theory that's not supported by facts, it should eventually go away. Now, misinformation or disinformation. Well, the problem with that is, again, some people said masks aren't going to help stop spread the pandemic. Now, that is a fact. It's either true or it's not. But they want to use these terms like misinformation to just say it's not acceptable, get rid of it, and censor you. Well, the problem is things that they are now saying were disinformation they're now admitting are true, right? And so the difficulty with this is they really just want to stop not disinformation, but information that doesn't go along with their political narrative, with the way they want the world to be. And if you're opposing it, it's disinformation. Now, if you want to come out saying things that are, again, let's take a real example, the Russia hoax, right? Donald Trump is in cahoots with Russia and is doing all these things. Well, people were spreading that conspiracy theory for a long time, right? It turns out not to be true after years and years of investigation, but that wasn't disinformation. That was perfectly fine. So the problem with these labels are they are literally just used to promote and to promote censorship of things that a particular party doesn't agree with. Now, what that sounds like is Marxism, socialism, right?
Right.
You have controlled media, and the government controls what people hear and see. And that's exactly what UNESCO is saying they want to do. And the most difficult about those is questioning elections, right? So if you're going to have a process for choosing the leaders of your country, and again, under moral philosophy, you don't have to have that system. The church can work with any form of government. But if you are, the people have to have faith that those elections are conducted above board. And to say, well, you can't say, wait a minute, I see something shading going on here. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. But you have to have a right to raise those questions, or the whole system, as I think we've seen, has no confidence. And
Mhm.
you're going to break down. The whole system's going to break down. But they don't want to be able to let you raise questions. And what's interesting about this is they're failing in certain countries. So this is what they want to use a world organization for, to force member organizations. So what are they saying? If the United States, now a member of UNESCO, we want to have a rule that says if you want to be a part of our club, you've got to go censor these things that we want on a coordinated scale. So it really shows this is kind of they're saying the quiet part out loud. They publish a report saying, here's what we want to do. So it's not a conspiracy theory that they want to censor, right? They're now publishing a report saying what they want to do, which is the irony of all this, right? It's not really a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. If the person says, we want to get together with governments and censor you, right? That's not a hidden conspiracy. It's in the open, right? And that's what we're seeing here. So that's first story. Second story is a really sad story. This appears to be a Catholic family, the Ruffinis, who the story really broke through. It's not GoFundMe. I'm trying to think what's the name of it. One of those crowdfunding sites. Give, Send, Go. Sorry, Give, Send, Go. They posted their story there, looking for $22,000 of legal expenses, because they had something that any traditional Catholic family has to worry about, right? There's a real danger in the traditionalist movement. Oh, if I'm Catholic, if I go to the traditional mass, if I teach the catechism, my kids will be fine. Well, I hate to tell you that there's 2,000 years of traditional Catholicism, long before Vatican II, and children still fell away from the faith. People still went to hell. The most chilling example I have is, you remember when Sister Lucia asked the Blessed Mother about a little friend of hers, who died as a child. The Blessed Mother said she will be in hell until the end of the world. I was thinking, wow, what could a little, adolescent girl do that deserved that much purgatory? What have I done? Wow. I mean, it's amazing. And again, this is 1917, long before Vatican II. So yeah, we really have to remember that, just because we have these things isn't a protection against temptation, the devil. There was great sin long before Vatican II. Well, this family, and let me just show you, here's a picture of them, had some real tragedy in their life. The father became ill. He was caring for his 93-year-old father. He couldn't do that anymore. So he had his 15-year-old son go and spend most of the day while the father was at work with his grandfather, 93-year-old, taking care of him. Prudent about technology. Their children were not allowed to have smartphones because of the danger it poses. Right. But because of this situation, he said, okay, son, you're going to have a phone, because you're going to be alone with your grandfather. We need to reach you. You may have an emergency. So he gave him a phone. Unfortunately, the son was dragged into the dark side of the internet. And again, technology itself is neutral, but it can be used for pretty nefarious purposes. He was sort of dragged into, and again, nefarious, not so much. I mean, there's obviously pornography and things, but there's also just, you can get sucked into worlds of losing time, of talking to people, of posting things where you just get lost in a virtual world. And he sort of was brought into these chat groups, which appear to have been FBI entrapment circles, where they try to get you to do things. He was being encouraged to post, print out posts, distribute flyers with pictures of himself in ski masks. He was being asked to take pictures of guns and post them. And again, impressionable young kid, he got involved and he started doing things and posting things that the father, he admits, shouldn't have done. It could happen to anybody, right? And the son, fortunately, he was formed with the Catholic conscience, and this is, can happen. He finally woke up one day and said, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. And he took everything down. I should celebrate this, right? The prodigal son. He did something bad. He realized it. He stopped. Well, the FBI took this as a sign that he had gone dark and joined a terrorist cell and was going to go out and start killing people. So they showed up at this family's house. They look really scary to me. With guns blazing, dragged them out in the middle of the night, handcuffed them, and put them through a whole legal process that cost them, again, tens of thousands of dollars to end up charging this young kid with a misdemeanor and realize he was not a terrorist. Now, again, a father really was very humble appeal, didn't make excuses, said my son did things wrong, but he was not a terrorist. He was baited into posting pictures that he shouldn't have, and things that can be twisted and distorted by the authorities. But the scary thing is, this is further evidence that the FBI, notwithstanding Merrick Garland lying about it, is targeting traditional Catholics and is out in chat rooms on the internet baiting people to post and say things so they can swoop in and ruin people's lives. Again, they're not just circling parking lots, taking down license plates, as in Virginia. They're on the internet. And it's a really important reason why technology has to be handled with care as a parent. Again, it's not that you have to go live like an Amish person, right? It's part of our world, but there's a danger. It's an occasion of sin to use a smartphone. And I don't say that, because it means you don't ever use it, but we encounter occasions of sin all the time in our life. Some of them are necessary. This appeared to be a necessary one, but we have to be aware of it and go into it and do what we can to protect ourselves against it, stay in a state of grace. And again, thank God this son realized it and kind of withdrew himself from it. But you also have to realize, in addition to being an occasion of sin, we also live in a dangerous world where Big Brother is looking on us, and they will distort things you say and do online for their own purposes, just as that infamous memo did there. So the good news, the family, after just a couple days, has already met their goal. Their 22,000 legal fees have been donated by people, and they've taken care of it. And again, thanks be to God, the son has hopefully learned a lesson about the dangers of technology. But it's a warning for all of us. We really have to be careful, and be careful online. If people are luring you into posting things, you don't know who's on the other end of that. That certainly could be an FBI agent, as it seems to have been in
Yeah.
this case.
Something I'd like to mention, Brian,
Yeah.
because I know we have a lot of young men listening as well.
Yes.
And this is particularly dangerous for those young men who either rediscover or discover their faith, or they discover that they have been deceived by a lot of these, talk about these nefarious world groups. And it's very easy to fall into these online communities that really aren't communities in general.
No.
You've got these communities online that as you mentioned, a lot of it's a real thing. It's joked about online a lot, but it's true that the FBI agents are actually online trying to encourage this kind of behavior. And what I would just say to any of them, you can't trust people on the internet, and you especially shouldn't be getting the majority of your convictions from people online. You're even up. We're all impressionable, just as human beings. The internet is a toxic place, and I would just encourage young men who have discovered new convictions, calm down, get involved in a real community like your church. That's one of the most amazing things that traditional Catholicism has to offer. You have a real community where you can actually be involved with your convictions, rather than just letting them stew while you are on the internet, becoming inflamed with rage 24/7 by what people are saying on the internet. Those people are not your friends. Get out into the real world. That's where stuff happens.
Exactly. And like I said, you need to judge what people say, and you lose a lot of those cues to whether you can judge to trust what they're saying when you're in a text only kind of chat room where you can't see the person, you can't hear their tone of voice, you can't judge, are they serious, are they, and you really have to remember, in that world you're losing a lot of the information that we need to judge. Okay, I see what this person said, but do they seem believable? Do they seem trustworthy? Right? If they come up to you in a blue suit and a red tie and dark sunglasses and an earpiece in their ear, oh wait, they might be an FBI agent. But if they're like, Cuckoo Man 2734, and they're, you have no idea who might be behind that, that handle, etc. So it does. Again,
100%.
I'm not saying you, like I said, you go off into the wilderness and become the wilderness family and cut yourself off
Right.
completely,
Yeah.
because it's a tool, but it is one that, particularly with people whose judgment is not properly formed yet, and that's adolescence, right?
Right.
You were closer to
Mhm.
adolescence than I was, but I can still remember. You think you know what you're doing, but you don't have enough experience, as Aristotle would say, to have good
Mhm.
judgment. You got to make mistakes sometimes to form that, and you just haven't had enough life experience.
Yep.
You have to be even more careful when in that. And again, I'm not faulting this father. He had a real need. It seemed like maybe the son needed this
Yeah.
device,
Yeah.
but we need to, it's something we need to be on guard about. And don't ever
Mhm.
say, because I've heard a lot, oh, I don't need to worry about that. I can give my son a smartphone because we go to the traditional mass. Well, it's not a magic, voodoo talisman that will keep you from, the devil tempting your children to sin. So,
Right. Right.
but I think we have one third vignette on this story from Spain on yet another example of censorship. This time of the
Right.
road of
Yeah.
prayer.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very recent, and it's also a developing story. This came out yesterday. In Madrid, in Spain, and again, we're talking about these historically Catholic countries. I mean, we talk about Ireland, Holland, and Spain. At one point in time, all three of those countries were jewels of the faith.
Yeah.
But in Spain, the socialist liberal government over there has they sent a government representative to Spain and banned, but in an undemocratic fashion, the public recitation of the rosary in Spain. It's unbelievable. Now, many Catholics, as a result, took to the streets, defied this order, as they should, and prayed the rosary publicly. And the thing I wanted to say about this is that they will come for your prayer life too. This is not just a political thing. I know there's a lot of in the trad movement. I do notice there's a tendency sometimes for people to say, well, we don't need to worry about politics. We just need to hunker down and, pray the rosary, go to the traditional mass, and just worry about our own lives. That's fine. But know that on the political level, they will come for your prayer life as well, because saying the rosary, praying the rosary, and prayer is an act uh, of belief in definitive truth, which they're against, right? You're praying to God, you're asking the Blessed Mother for prayers, you're adhering to a system that is built on Western values, and they hate that, and they will come for it too. As if they have any chance, they will make sure that any sort of public or even private displays of Catholicism will be banned as well. So we need to make sure that we're making ourselves active in fighting back against this um, demonic force trying to stop the public displays of Catholicism, and we need to stand strong. So God bless those Catholics, those Spanish Catholics who are trying to make Hispania one of the crown jewels of the faith once again.
Yes, and again, this almost seems like deja vu. It's like we're back in the 1930s. I mean, this is the kind of thing
Right.
that happened in Spain during the revolution in the 1930s. But again, you have a really good point. I don't doubt that there are people in the Justice Department of this country and the FBI who, if they had their way, right, they're not there yet, but they would ban traditional Catholic masses, for example. I
Yeah.
think they are a threat. They see the public profession of Christ the King as a threat, because it is a threat to secular liberalism, and they would be more than happy to do that. Now, again, that I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow in this country,
No.
but it could happen in a year or 2 years. I mean, if I had told you in 2015 that in the year 2020, 5 years later, the government would lock everybody in their houses, more or less would force you to walk around with a piece of flimsy paper across your face, would require you to get a particular medical treatment to keep a job, you thought, never in this country. Not
Right.
maybe in Soviet Russia, but never here.
Right.
Look how quickly things can happen. So
Yep.
absolutely right. I mean, if this could happen there, it could happen here. And it's amazing. I looked at some of the video for this. They've like police coming up, like they arrested one woman, dragged them off for standing on church steps praying.
Yeah.
Um,
Crazy. Crazy. Yeah.
yes. Well, there we have our stories from this week. Sorry about our rocky start in the beginning, But again, if you've enjoyed this content, please help us by sharing this video, liking it, subscribing to our channels. And today, tomorrow, excuse me, December 1st, it just launched today, but December 1st, our December issue of the newspaper is out. Some really great articles in there, some edifying articles. Our apologetic series on Monsignor Fenton is coming close to an end. So please sign up. If you sign up for a subscription, in addition to 12 issues for a yearly subscription, you get online access to our archive of several years of back issues. So you really get more than a year if you subscribe, as little as $32 for an e-subscription. So please look at our website, which will be at the end of this video. So I guess unless we have anything else, we will begin with a prayer and really just, I think, pray for coming of Advent, particularly that we take that time to prepare for the coming of Christ. We know that he came in the fullness of time. He is the master of history. And no matter what Pope Francis is doing, whatever the authorities are doing in Spain, whatever Merrick Garland's doing up there in DC, they're not the lords of history. They think they are, but they're not. Our Lord Jesus Christ, who will come to us in a particular way. Every Christmas will bring special, particular graces that are unlike any Christmas before. Let's pray that we are prepared to face the challenges that God has for us. So, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Eternal Father, offer you the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ and all the instruments of his holy passion, that thou may put division in the camp of thy enemy, for as thy beloved Son has said, a kingdom divided against itself shall fall. Our Lady of Fatima,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful first Sunday of Advent, the beginning of the new liturgical year. Happy liturgical new year to you. And God willing, we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.